Hello, everyone. This is Ronnie. I want to talk about a subject that's come up for me because I saw someone go away from a raw vegan style diet to eating meat again. And this is not the first person that I've seen do this. Uh, for some reason, it's often, well, it's not always men, but there's a lot of men that have done it. And it's often as a result of some fears and insecurities that come up around certain things. But this guy in particular had some issue with his teeth, with his mouth, had to get an operation. He felt like it wasn't healing very quickly. He was having issues still, it wasn't feeling good. And then he started to incorporate some animal products into his diet in some way. And then he felt that it was feeling better or healing faster or whatever. And the reason that I want to bring this up is because it's easy to mistake a change of how you're interpreting or feeling something as meaning that some kind of healing has happened or that something has improved or whatever. And when it comes to things healing, something I learned from Dr. Doug Graham is that if there's a part of your body that is healing, it can be painful. And it just means it's the focus, the concentration, the energy is going into that area. So, in the context of people fasting, for example, you might have had an accident many years ago and you damaged your knee or your ankle or something. You never fully uh, recovered it, but you kind of got on with your life. Then you go to fast, and you fast, and all of a sudden your knee gets really intensely sore. All of a sudden, and you think back to the fact that you had this accident years ago, and maybe your knee had never been quite the same again, but it hadn't really troubled you. But all of a sudden, this pain's coming up, and what that means is that the body is all of a sudden able to start focusing on healing that knee properly. And what often people feel is they feel some pain there, and maybe a couple of days later it's disappeared, and that's the healing process sort of finished. I've experienced something like that when I went raw, and about 6 months in or something, I started to feel pains in my hips, and I felt pains in my knees. Now, prior to going raw, I'd started to feel prior to going vegan, I was starting to feel pains in my hips when I went out walking. I don't know if it was maybe the first stages of arthritis of some kind. I don't know, but I was starting to feel something, and I was conscious of it. And in the first week of like going raw and going vegan, those pains just seemed to disappear, and I was amazed by that. But 6 months later, after being raw for like 6 months consistently, I started to feel these pains in my hips and in my knees. Now, I'd heard from Dr. Robert Lockhart at the Woodstock Fruit Festival. He said the body stores toxins in the joints, and so when you change diet, at some point the toxins will be cleared out. And I kind of interpreted what I was feeling at that time as like this might be the toxins being cleared out of these joints and stuff. Like, I don't know if that was really the case, but there was healing going on in those areas. And a couple of days later or a day later, the pain disappeared. And I've had other people talk about that. I've heard people talk about going fasting. Quite a well-known, well, it's not very well known actually, but a friend of mine who had arthritis for years and years went to fast and went off the painkillers, experienced a lot of pain, incredible amount of pain, and then the pain disappeared after a while of fasting. It was the first time in his life since he was a teenager that he had experienced this pain, which was amazing. So pain doesn't necessarily mean something's getting worse. It could mean that something's getting better. Now, it's not, obviously that's not always the case. That's not some rule. But pain can sometimes mean that something is getting better. And if you think about, you get a cut or you get something happen and it's painful, and it's just painful and uncomfortable and everything, and the body's healing. The healing process is happening. And what I sort of see potentially has happened is that this man was experiencing pain, discomfort, a feeling that he didn't like. His body had been seriously went through some damage, some issues, that he had some surgery going on. Going to take a long time to heal from that, unfortunately. And starts to get it into his head, maybe there's something wrong with his diet, starts to get insecure about it, doesn't have a fundamental knowledge of the nutrition surrounding the diet because he's too arrogant to need that. He'll just go along with intuition and spirituality, and these fruitarian ideas that sound good. Oh yeah, fruit, yeah, that's the food that we need to. All right, great, that's enough. Like, they don't get this foundational knowledge, understanding. They don't get around someone like Dr. Doug Graham, and Professor Rosalind Graham, a Grant Campbell, Chris Kendall, Lauren Lockman, who was speaking to the other day, a Don Bennett, someone that's been doing this decades, Karen Ramsey. They're not getting around these people, Rick and Karen Dina. But I can go into names, but they're not getting around these people. Who are they getting around? The YouTube channel of Robert Morse and stuff like that. And Robert Morse's information is great in some ways, but lacking in other ways. And kind of like, yeah, let's just talk about the mystical, spiritual stuff, and I think that's what a lot of his viewers want. They're maybe not that interested in the other stuff, and I'm sure he knows all the stuff, but it's maybe not what he wants to speak about, whatever. But what happens, therefore, when someone's going through this and then they start eating meat and they start eating eggs and they introduce dairy products to their system? They believe that when that pain disappears and all that issue disappears, that's the healing finished. And all they needed was to add some meat into the equation and some dairy products and some eggs. And all they needed was to add that in, and that's the nutrients their body needed to heal really quickly. And that's, in my view, not what happened. That's not what happened with people like Tim Sheaf, with Elise, with all these people that had an experience of eating meat or going back to eating meat, and all of a sudden their issues seem to be gone. What really happened is that temporarily, or at least in the short term, the healing intensity, potentially, this is an opinion, the intensity of that healing process reduced because the body now had something else to deal with. That's the way that I would interpret that. The idea that you're going through this healing process, then you eat meat and that's it, is so unrealistic. And what it would really require is that in that meat is something that the body needs that it's not getting to create that healing sufficiently. And what would that be? That's what we have to know. What are the nutrients in meat that are fueling that to happen? Could be pure calories. The person could be eating not enough, but that's not really the case in this situation. Is it fats? Is it omega-3, omega-6? If it is, there's plenty of those in fruits and vegetables and other plant foods. If if you want really high amounts. Way too high amounts you don't need. Um, Protein, sure, but in the human body, the protein is going to be broken down into amino acids to be then reconstructed into human protein. So the protein's not that big a deal. Other animal fats, well, we don't really need those fats. We create those fats ourselves from omega-3. B12, unlikely to be the case that B12, well, B12 isn't a vitamin that would be used for the construction of bone and teeth and things like that. It's not a mineral. Is it one of the minerals? Calcium, phosphate, magnesium, is it one of those? Well, you're much better off getting those from vegetables if you need a high quantity of those, if that was the case, which you don't. You need fruit. Fruit is the right quantity of these things. So, what is it? This is the education that allows you to remain long term on a raw vegan lifestyle. Is that if you go through an issue like that, you don't freak out and go, "Oh my God, I need to eat meat and eggs." By the way, the eating of meat and eggs as a big part of the diet is a 20th century marketing construct. This is not something that human beings were doing for tens of thousands of years. Like, oh, people were getting up in the morning having their eggs and bacon. No, it was a marketing concept. People have been eating loads of cheese forever. No, it's surpluses from the World War II, leading to excesses of dairy that had to be sold back to the public. The government took on huge quantities of dairy products, which they stored as cheese in the case of America. And then they consciously were trying to get it into people's diets to sell off this cheese. It's all marketing. It's all business. It all comes down to, it's not public health. It wasn't related to, is this healthy? Now, they might have naively thought it was healthy, and it is healthier to have a calorically sufficient diet with cheese than a calorically insufficient diet without cheese. If that's your only option to get yourself up to the amount of calories you need to function adequately and maintain a healthy body weight, then yeah, that's better. But obviously, a cheese diet is not a healthy diet. So there's all this marketing that's gone in for years, making people think meat is essential, and then we realize it's not. Dairy, we need it for bones. Then we realize it's not the case. Fish for omega-3s, whatever. All this kind of nonsense that's come out over the years. And even in the case of orange juice being marketed as a product, because they had so many oranges. They had a surplus of oranges in like the American growers of oranges and stuff. So they created orange juice as a product that people had for breakfast. No one was drinking orange juice before that. It was created as an idea, as a product. Bananas, obviously, marketed, but different thing. But you don't need bananas for potassium, and you don't need oranges for vitamin C. But that's what's in people's heads. So healing takes time and often longer than you want it to. That's why avoiding damaging yourself is so important, because you will waste so much time in your life trying to recover. Decades potentially. I mean, weight loss is a great example, because losing weight is a healing process in a sense. But you lose weight so much slower than you gain weight. Or potentially. So you're wasting so much time. You waste so much time by gaining weight, by not looking after your weight and gaining the weight. You waste so much time on the back end trying to get that weight down. And I don't really want to go into a gender thing here, but for women, Obviously, weight is a bit of a more sensitive issue in women to some degree. Um, but that could be you're wasting time in the best years of your life, like the healthiest years of your life for, having children and things like that, where you have to be physically very strong. And being overweight's not a good idea for all that. And anyway, I don't know, I'm getting off into a tangent here a little bit. But healing takes tremendous amounts of time. Try and avoid damaging yourself. Try and look after yourself. You're going to pay for it one day. You're going to pay for it in time and money potentially. But you're going to pay for it in time. And you're going to pay for it in emotional stress. So get your education, and it's important to get the education and learn. It's important to get around people like Doug and Rosalind and get them to bring you back down to earth, the reality of this. And we at the Fruit Festival, they'll be there. I'll put a link below to learn more about the Fruit Festival. You've got to get the fundamental education around this. Don't give that away. Don't give that away. Don't skip over that, is what I meant to say. Don't skip over that. Super important. So that when you come to these difficult moments in life, you go, you know what? This healing is taking a long time, and that's just it's gonna take. Can't speed it up. You can only slow it down. And if you add in meat and add in dairy and add in cheese, you just slow it down. Imagine that you're going through emotional stress. Someone dies. You're going through the grief of someone in your life dying. And then someone comes along and starts beating you up. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm not feeling grief right now. That grief that I felt is just gone. So yeah, if you all of a sudden you're getting beaten up, I mean that's a bit of a more intense thing. But I don't know, your house goes on fire. All of a sudden, grief of that person dying is not the first thing in your mind. The house is on fire. You've got to go and deal with that. You get focused, like coronavirus. Like, what's going to get rid of the fear around coronavirus? Well, what if a world war erupted? All of a sudden, people would be like, who cares about masks and vaccinations? Like, the world war's happening. We've got to all get out there and hide or run away or, I don't know, whatever you do in a world war. We've got to get in a bunker, But we're all too close to each other in the bunker. Oh, shut up, there's nuclear bombs coming. Like, that would get rid of the fear, and stuff would get rid of the stress and the grief. But the grief is still there. It's just temporarily something's come in and overwhelmed your system, and you can't anymore interpret or even deal with the grief. So the body stops processing the grief. The emotional system stops. And to some extent, that's how some people live their lives. They've got so much grief and issues with certain things that they've not processed, that they're continually looking for ways to stimulate themselves, to make themselves busy, to make themselves to continue to engage in sexual behavior inappropriately, to eat food inappropriately, to do all these things, exercise inappropriately or whatever it is, to constantly stimulate their system so that they're not falling into that place of dealing with the grief and dealing with the pain and the pain coming up. And if someone can't sit alone on their own and they've got a problem, and to me this is sort of similar. This is sort of a similar thing where you just overwhelm your system and all of a sudden the pain, the healing that you're very conscious of seems to have disappeared. It's not disappeared. It's not disappeared. It still has to happen. You've just numbed it, you've stopped it, you've slowed it down, you're introducing something else into the body. Because when you introduce meat into your body, you're immediately starting to damage the arteries in your heart. That's a major priority for the body to deal with. And it's carcinogenic, and it's toxic, and it's bacteria overload, and it's a stress on your stomach, on the digestive system, and over and over and over. And you think that this is causing healing. Once again, a lack of a fundamental education around nutrition, around the human body, around diet. So, I don't know. Anyway, check out the Love Fruit podcast if you want to check out some interviews with raw vegans. Love Fruit podcast, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, on this channel as well. Please share it with others. UK Fruitfest, fruitfest.co.uk if you want to get around people for a large retreat, residential retreat. Would love to see you there. fruitfest.co.uk, go and check that out. What else? Fruity Fridays. Friday nights, join us. I'll put a link down below. rawvegancourse.com/fruityfriday to join up to that list. And see you all soon, everyone. I don't know where I'm going to see you soon. I guess see you soon on this channel. But thank you very much.